We're going to call this meeting to order. It is 6 o'clock. We want to be prompt. The first item on our agenda would be we're going to take a roll call just so that we can get attendance. So we'll start with me, Juliette Miller, Chair.
Chris Shannon, School Committee.
Amy Sareva, Special Ed Administrator.
Kate Pearl, School Counselor at the Wilkins.
Katie Monahan, Principal at the Wilkins.
Jennifer Hilton, Parent of the DAW.
Rob Cancelleri, Principal of the DAW.
Anne-Marie Gilbert, Counselor at the DAW.
Kitsette Jeffrey, Parent at the Gibbons.
Christine Feeney, Principal at the Hanson.
Charlotte Green, Parent at the Hanson.
Ellie Rake, Grade 1 Hanson.
Erin Matthews, Teacher at the South.
Jillian Savoy, Teacher at the South.
Dennis Rigo, Director of Facilities and Grounds.
Megan Texera, Co-Chair of CPAC.
Joe Bida, Superintendent of Schools.
And we'll go to those online. Ms. Weiss, would you go first?
Malcolm Weiss, School Committee, and Gibbons Parent.
Thank you. Ed?
Ed Clark, Director of Special Education.
Amy?
Amy Quavey, EL Director.
And Nicole?
Nicole Loza, Director of the Preschool.
Thank you very much. The first agenda item this evening is acceptance of minutes of November 14th. You should all have a copy of those. They came out with the agenda. Anybody like to make a motion? Okay, excellent. Excellent. So that's Jen, is it Hilton? Hilton is the first, and Katie Monahan seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Oh, Catherine, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to note that under the long-term fiscal planning, the minutes say that closing the South and reassigning the Jones to the Wilkins will result in only 3 elementary schools. It will actually result in 4 elementary schools.
Okay, so let's make that change on the notes.
Motion is as amended then.
Yeah, so we're going to amend that motion to include the change from 3 to 4. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is to establish some committee norms. This there's a lot of people on this committee, and people are going to have the opportunity to have lots of opinions and voice their opinions. So we want to make sure that we can do so in a way that's productive and efficient, and that everyone's voices can be heard. So the best way to do that generally is to create norms. And so I open it up to the committee to suggest some items that they would like to see be a norm for the group. Very good. Any others? Yes.
One mic, one voice.
Any others? I'm going to say assume positive intentions. Yes, Rob.
Be comfortable with discomfort.
I would say be respectful.
You're doing a great job. Anything else?
Speak on behalf of yourself.
State of the agenda. I'll say agenda timeliness.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, think of all the kids, not just like yours.
Absolutely. Perfect.
To that point, be inclusive.
Any others? It's a pretty good list. Is there any discussion about any of those items? Anybody would like to change them, revise them, add to that some descriptions? Or are you good? Good? Good?
So we'll make sure that we have these added to our agenda item for every agenda, so that it's nice and clear and everybody understands our rules.
Perfect. Awesome. Welcome, Mr. Dorr. All right, before this meeting, we received some emails from Dr. Baeta that had some information about Andover and Norwood were the two schools that were sent to us. So we wanted... And the what? Plymouth from the PowerPoint?
Yeah, wasn't that on that too? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think it was just Andover and...
Yeah.
Norwood. So if you had an opportunity to check out those websites, we'd kind of like to open up some conversation about what you saw, what you're thinking, any ideas that were generated, concerns, questions about those items. Yes, Katie.
I think one of the takeaways that I had was how important it will be to have some consideration about not just looking at K-5 schools, but some alternative options, like maybe K, 1-3, 4, or 3-5, or you know what I mean.
Other configurations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Other thoughts?
I really appreciated the Andover site. Specifically, I loved the little video, that like 3-minute clip. I thought it summarized the project so well. It was so easily digestible. Like when I got into Norwood, I thought, oh, this looks nice. And then I was like, this is too many words. And I just felt the Andover one was like really digestible for people. And I thought, oh, this would be such an easy way to get this out, connect. Like we have all these different forms that the community already uses to connect, and this was such a nice digestible format. I'm assuming it would be easy to translate, at least, verbally, maybe not all the slides and everything, but I just really appreciated that nice little summary of like, how did we get here? Where are we now? What are we doing? It was really digestible for people, I thought.
I agree with that. I found the same thing. I thought, no, it was a little confusing, that website. It was hard to sort of navigate. And I liked the videos, not just the little clip, but they also had the videos of the presentations, which I thought were really helpful. So I think that is a way to communicate. I think it's really important. Absolutely. Other thoughts?
I was just going to note that we're reaching out to the superintendent in Andover just to see if I can pick their brain around ideas and thoughts, maybe even consider a Zoom call with them even, or their designee, to just get some input about what were the bumps in the road, were some of the issues that because that's not really seen. I mean, I guess if we dug into the minutes of stuff, we could do that, but could probably just get that by making a call and maybe even getting a few of us on a call with him or her, and so on.
I think that would be really important to hear from Andover, especially because it sounds like they've been going through this process since 2018. And the trajectory of that, how now it seems like it's on a fast pace to get completed. in between 2018 and now, what caused it to be delayed so much. Where we're in a bit of a different situation with the South School needing to be closed due to the condition that it's in. It would be interesting to just understand from the superintendent's perspective and the school committee's perspective in Andover what challenges we definitely could it be delayed, because we can't have ours delayed, sadly.
I thought some other important points about the Andover site is that they definitely had some community forums for the community and surveys. They send out surveys to the community. They had a timeline on there of the process from this point forward, not necessarily from 2018, but how to move forward from here. A lot of good information, a lot of good important steps I think we can sort of glean from Andover as well. Go ahead, Catherine.
I wanted to add to the Andover, the surveys. I like that they were continually publishing the results of the surveys, and they stressed the transparency, and it felt like there was listening to the community at various stages. Again, I would love to hear from the superintendent and learn how that factored into the decision, how the community felt about the feedback, but I really liked their publishing of the survey results and what questions they were asking that felt like the community felt involved in that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rob.
So when interacting with the community, I feel like the redistricting portion of our plan has somewhat been overshadowed by the new building. And I liked how Andover kicked off that the actual process of redistricting has a lot of positives. Like, that was the first kind of fact box they had on their website, like, equitable diversification of students and equal access to different resources, like, to stress the positives, because I think the idea of your kid potentially going to a new school is very stressful. But overall, big picture, even if we weren't dealing with a new building being built or a building being closed, there are positives, because I can't remember the last time Stoughton did this. Like, we've changed a lot since the community breakdown was taken into consideration with school enrollment.
Dr. Quilly?
I was just saying, I liked with Andover, their website, how they put the frequently asked questions. I think, like Catherine said, the transparency to diminish, people talking out of turn in the community. I think the frequently asked questions is a really important thing to list on your website and have it be a working, living document ongoing.
Thank you. Jake?
I will say the one thing I did like about the Norwood site was the map, the interactive component of the map. I thought that was the kind of the neatest thing that they had going for them, because I know people really want to be able to zoom in on their individual I think they eventually got to that point, but I'm not sure what software and company they used for that, but it was really interesting.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Just a quick one, if I may. To go to the comment about the interactive map, we do have an article going forth to town meeting for the purposes of bringing in a third party to help with redistricting, and that's exactly where they come in. You have a number of different organizations. They'll create the heat map for you, and from there you can play around to see what it looks like and so on and so forth. So just as if it gets passed, that'll be one of the things that we'd be doing regardless if we have an approval for a new building or if we're redistricting without. So I just wanted to bring that up to your attention.
Excellent. Good. Any other additions to that agenda item?
I was just reflecting on that survey again and how thoughtful it was, and thinking about if we spoke to the Andover superintendent or somebody from the committee, how did they decide what questions to ask, and how did they get that? I would like to know, because it felt intimidating when reading it, but it was well done.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so I think that gives us a good starting place to start thinking about what we might want to see in our process as we go forward. So we'll keep those things in mind. The next agenda item is to establish a modular classroom working group. And so Dr. Baeta shared with us last meeting, if you recall, the idea of visiting some modulars to see what that might look like, since that is probably something that is a part of this plan ultimately. So probably the working group would have to do some day trips during the day, like when school's probably in session, those kind of day hours. So I'm going to open it up to see if there's anybody who's interested in being a part of that working group, that they might go to some of those locations that have modulars to view them and sort of tour that space. Anybody who would like to do that?
I would like to be part of that group.
Absolutely.
And these won't take place until after April 1st, just to let you know. We're not going to do all of this work not knowing where direction we're going in. So literally, it could become a very quick working group that needs to really do a lot of this, or it could be, we don't have to do that.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'll be part of that group.
Okay.
As a parent.
As parent?
Yeah.
I'll be part of it as well. Kids at Jeffrey.
Is there like limitations on how they can go, or?
Great question. So I'll work with my colleagues, superintendents, and the directors of facilities. It could be that if there's, let's say there's 10 of you that want to do it, maybe we send the first group of 5 goes to this site, the next group goes to a different site, allows you to, that type of thing. The one consistent person I think is important is Dennis, because it's facilities. So Dennis and I were just in Barnstable. I was talking to Dr. Sarah Hearn, who's my colleague down there, and we've known each other for many years, and she wanted to pick my brain on a different project I had done in my last district, and said, hey, I'll take a drive down to Barnstable real quick, because they just opened up 6 of them in an elementary school. And what was interesting was they're not connected to the building, which is causing a lot of discussion. But at the same time, they're big, they're beautiful, they look great. I also want to tell you that today I was at O'Donnell Middle School touring the 24-year-old ones that were supposed to be temporary, where there's no heat in one classroom. The 24-year-old systems weren't made for 24 years of work. Yeah, it's interesting. And there's also some school districts that have permanent 1-story and 2-story modulars, which are very interesting as well. So we're going to just, if we have to do the work, we'll do it right and try to get ourselves out in April and May, if that's what it comes to it. I'll be sad, but at the same time, it's what we have to do.
Thank you. You're interested? Could you remind me of your name?
No, it's LYNS.
Thank you.
It is the start of MCAS season for the elementary principals, but if it aligns with my schedule, I'd love to participate.
Yeah, it's great comment. So for clarity purposes, I'm going to have to work around their schedule, so it's going to be a lot of that. Again, it's the reason when we're not doing it now is, to be quite honest, to leave school and schedules and everything else, not knowing what the April 1st vote is going to be. I think it's just better to just wait until then anyways, plus the weather.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, so that's a pretty good group. Anybody else?
And if there was ever a need because somebody can't go and somebody else wants to go, it's.
Jake Dorr raised his hand.
Yep. Rob usually takes you to lunch right afterwards, and he pays. He's really good.
And Amy, you can put me on there as well. Yes.
And I believe at the last meeting, we talked about the possibility of those being recorded for people who could not attend.
Yeah. We'll add Jeff to that.
Congratulations.
Do I get lunch too?
I don't know. Ask Rob. He's taking everybody to lunch.
Okay. Excellent. So thank you for that. I appreciate those who have volunteered. I'm sure that will be very productive. The next item on the agenda is discussion on district structure pre-K through 5. As Ms. Monahan said, she's interested in sort of looking at other structures for other schools. Of course, just a reminder that if the new school goes forward, that new South Wilkins school is going to need to be a K through 5 school. That's what the structure is. That's what the MSBA has approved. So that wouldn't really be able to change, but it's good to consider the other schools, or if the South School doesn't go through, what that might mean in terms of other configurations. So I'd like to open up the floor.
I will say that just because Katie and I are on the building committee too, the way that the school was designed, it does allow, like, there is natural separation between the 3 different levels, and it is K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the way that it was written in. So just a point of, I think there's a lot of possibilities if the new building does go through in terms of like an upper lower type of breakdown. So if that is a model that the district looks at for other schools, I think it could be supported by that new building as well. So just want to put that out there.
Dr. Quilley?
For those of you who might not know, before I came to Stoughton, I was a principal for Kingston Elementary School, which was pre-K through 2. And I think with the current needs of the current population, we really should consider that for 2 primary reasons. One, the literacy needs for pre-K through 2 are so vastly different, as well as the 3 through 5 are MCAS testing years. It's just a very different demographic of kids right now. I think with social emotional issues for the pre-K through 2 group, having a separate elementary school would be extremely beneficial. So it's just a thought. I don't know if Ed would share my opinion, but I think it's a thought, especially for our populations like our multilingual learners and our special education students.
Thank you. Christine?
I agree with Dr. Quealy about the K2 model, having all the resources in one building. I just think that would be very impactful, even for the 3 to 5 school. The other question I just have about that is whether it passes or not, if we change, well, I guess if it passes and that's a K to 5 school, could we still reconfigure the other schools and then someday down the line make that the 3 to 5 school? Yes, maybe.
So there's a lot of complicated topics that go with this, right? First of all, anytime you're looking at a structure of a district, it's probably as controversial as redistricting, if not more so, because it's very philosophically based. And although it's very educationally grounded as a positive, it has some pushback on family dynamics, where your children are going to be, because it leads to more transitions. So if you're a K2, then you move to a 3-5, then you move to a 6-8, then you move to a 9-12. You're adding more transitions along the way, which have some has some educational positives mostly, and then a couple of negatives because of certain transitions within certain populations. There are districts that have built new schools and also had configuration changes. There are districts that have gone around that topic of early childhood center. So you got a pre-K, and then 1 to 5s, and then 6, 8, 9, 12. And then, of course, around us, we have a couple of districts that are actually 5-8s, which is not an option for us at this time, but 10 years from now could become a discussion simply because of a growing population and potentially a new middle school at some point. But has a lot of ups and downs in the views of folks. And then, as Dr. Q said, you have the pre-K to 2s, 3-5s. There are districts out there that have done that, and they've done it for different reasons, right? Some of it is educational, some of it is cost savings. You got to really take a look at what does it mean for transportation, because that is usually the cost that becomes a problem, is you have to potentially bus more students, not less, as just one problematic area. some communities have just said, hey, this is in the best interest of education, so therefore this is what we're going to do. Other districts have walked away because the number's just too high. But it is that family component that in a lot of more diverse communities, I'm just thinking just a few years back with Boston, it was a major discussion because they were making changes to their schools. Brookline, when they went to K-8s, that was very controversial early on. It's another hot topic that will lead to having to have a lot of transparency and surveys and questions, because whenever you start it, if you do that, the impact on certain families could become significant. I came from a district that was pre-K3 with a K3, then a 4-5. So everybody came from those two schools and went into a 4-5. And it took some time, but the 4-5 was kind of like, oh, we're new and we're leaving, right? You never got to really establish the culture. And the PTO was always harder for them to run, just basic things that curriculum-wise, it was fine, but it was a little bit of felt like a little bit of a just passing through type of thing. Took a little longer to create culture and climate around being a school and all of that. But as a pre-K3 and a K3, we loved it. It's just a different feel to it. The only other thought on these types of reconfigurations is if you're going to be redistricting and you're looking at a new school and you're looking at all of this other stuff, potentially new school doesn't happen, we might as well take all the people in the room with all of our thoughts and ideas and close the door and bang it out and get it out there to the public and get information and then say, okay, we've done all our work. We've looked under every tree, and this is our best recommendations to go to the school committee for consideration. Might as well do it all in one show, if you will. But a lot of this has a lot to do with what happens in April. Actually, what happens February 3rd and then in April, because it still has to go through town meeting. Of which, just to let you know, I have to leave at 1:15 because I have to go to town hall for another meeting on that.
I just wanted to add something else. If we're wanting to continue having a discussion about changing the potential configuration of the schools, and I'm going off of older information, but when you looked at the heat maps that were presented to the school building committee in terms of the demographics in the town, where our ELE kiddos were living, where the low socioeconomic students are living, they are very concentrated in one part of the town. And it would be a challenge in terms of redistricting to try to make all of the schools, as we're talking about, inclusive and equitable as possible, because of where a large percentage of those families are living naturally. So another benefit to thinking about the positives of going to a K2, 3, 5 would be that it would be much easier in terms of distributing the students throughout the town so that all of the schools were more equitable. Just another thought to consider.
That idea was also part of that Andover presentation. That was like the third priority, I think.
I think it was for Norwood as well, because Norwood had one central location for all of their social economic families too. So they could be helpful.
I was just going to add that from a parent perspective, I see a lot of educational benefits for, for the K2, 3, 5. But if we do switch that up, thinking about a lot of families in this town need childcare, and that may include thinking about the middle and high school and how they figure into this, because there are a number of teenagers who watch siblings or neighbors until a parent comes home, or who have a job or sports, and so that's going to need to factor in as well. It's not just going to be looking at the elementary school, but also thinking about the middle and high school schedule and timing and the transportation as well. So it's going to be quite a big discussion, but that would be another reason to survey kind of the whole town or the whole school community.
Yeah, and one of the thoughts that go into that, regardless if you have a new school, but more so if you're working within what we have and you're looking at different ideas, is school start times will have to be discussed as part of that. In the district that came from, my pre-K school, the preschool started half an hour earlier than the K-3 did, and so K-3 didn't start until 9. So in the wintertime, that was tough. My before school and after school program were always packed at that school because parents would drop off on the way to work and just pay, and the kids were already there, and they'd have breakfast and play and all that stuff. So, but that's how you save on transportation, right, is you have those different start times. But it was always, I mean, my entire 10 years there, our goal was always to try to move to get the 2 elementary schools to the same start time, and it just didn't happen.
Can you just tell me the different sizes of these? I know the South has got 300 kids. My perception is that the DAW is twice the size. I don't know if that's true or not.
No, you're running about 400 at the DAW, 400, give or take, 400 at the Gibbons, about 290, 285, 295 at the Hanson, and about the 300 at the South. Who did I miss? The Wilkins running around 330. I was about under 350. And then the Jones right now at about, give or take, 150, depending on the week and who's coming. And that's the highest number we've had. And we have a waiting list. And then the high school, the middle school is about 825, and the high school is 1100. Built for 1080. Actually, I should share with the group at some point the NESDEC study. It's our enrollment study by a third party. They take a look at birth rates. They take a look at all of the building permits. They take a look at churn. They take a look at all of that stuff. And we're projected to be at 4,300 students in the next 10 years. You're looking at another 400 kids. The high school is projected to be at over 1,300 in 2033. I hope I'm still alive so I can celebrate that. But so our numbers are really at a point of and also to be transparent, we're seeing our shelter students, our migrant shelter students, are moving out into permanent housing, which is a fantastic thing. But they're going at a quicker rate right now of leaving the shelters than we've probably than we've ever seen just in the last week. The numbers are, double-digit numbers, which is great. They're getting permanent housing. They do have the right to stay in Stoughton Public Schools if they so choose for the remainder of the year, academic year. But we are seeing that turnover as well.
Dr. Quayle?
I just wanted to speak to numbers since we were talking numbers, and to piggyback off of what Katie said about being mindful of diversity and equity. I pulled the numbers today of multilingual learners in each building, and just to have the stark contrast between Wilkins currently serves 110 multilingual learners. That's former English learners and current English learners. The majority are current English learners, and South is 53. So that's a pretty stark contrast. And then we have Gibbons at 78, Daw at 74, and Hanson at 50. So we have a real stark contrast between 110 students and 50 students in another building. So when we are thinking about redistricting students, I do think we have to be mindful of special education and multilingual learner populations
it's not
in the different neighborhoods.
It's not only mindful, it's legally required. When you have a formal redistricting and buildings, you are under literally OCR could come in here at any point and say you're creating a poverty school, you're creating a minority school for language, you're creating a SPED school. Those are all the numbers that we have to crunch as a group when we're really looking at what our schools need to look like, because it has to be pretty close to balance. Right now we have one school in comparison to the others. When you look at things like high needs, low income, it's about an 18 percentage point swing between one elementary school and the other four. Those are numbers. We had issues at the Wilkins when it was the West about having really creating minority school for linguistic minorities because we were sending everybody through there. And now we are back to having more than we did at one point. A lot of that has to do with just simple, where do people live and where do they go to school? It's not just, a lot of people want to point, because we have the shelters, that's an argument over here. This is people that are moving into our town and living here and pay taxes here or rent and have a mortgage and all that stuff. Dr. Quayle reminds me all the time that in 2021 we had like 250 EL students, and between EL and FLEP students we're well over 600 now. So that's pretty significant numbers, and growing. It's a destination.
We have 751 students who've been receiving ESL services at some point in their educational career right now.
Wow. So,
Something to think about.
something to think about.
Any other thoughts?
I would suggest that when the time comes and it's needed to be discussed, that this become a working group as well, because this is a big group. If you concise it to have a group that just goes fact-finding, comes back with the facts, and then this group has the deliberations and the discussions, it just moves us quicker and more efficient.
Any other thoughts? Okay, moving right along. Gonna get out by 7 for sure. Any other matters? Yes.
I had two. Apologies if I was not fully present and cognizant, but I was just wondering, what is our timeline? And second, at the last meeting, I had suggested that we consider what our success criteria would be, like how will we know when we were effective in our role and our duty? Because that might provide some guidance on what the process looks like and who is consulted when.
I can address both. The first one would be that our timeline and discussions we had at the last meeting was to take it slow right now because of the April vote coming up.
Right.
However, if the vote is positive in April, then we have a lot of time, because we won't see shovels into the ground until 26. Building won't be opening until the end of 28, if not 29. So probably 29. So therefore, this group can take its time really looking at what a redistricting looks like with a new building. If not, then the first thing this group will have to do is come up with a timeline of how do we redistrict with the buildings that we have and the modulars. And you got to remember, the whole process will require recommendations to the school committee, filing of articles to town meeting, getting to town meeting, getting them passed, and then actually having them built on site, and then redistricting taking place. You would probably be looking at all of the sites being completed, which they'll do it all at the same time, whatever the company is, and then literally having a date of start. More than likely, hopefully a September date, but it could be a mid-year date. You're not going to have things, it could be, that would be horrific for an entire district, and I wouldn't recommend it. But so the shift would probably be September, I would think, with this timeline, wanting to notify families, and again, this will be up to this committee, but giving families the opportunity to know that the next school year, whatever that means, your child may be going somewhere else, would probably mean no later than the fall of 27. We're in 25, so if you took your time to get there, hopefully you could get a report to the school committee for recommendations. But remember, those recommendations are going to have to flow pretty quickly, because they require borrowing money architects. You got to still go through the entire state bid process. You can't just bring in a company and say, put some modulars down. You have to go out for a bid, specs. You have to hire a third party to come in and do that for you. You've got environmental, you got everything that you would have, but now it's going on at 3 buildings, maybe even 4, depending on where our enrollment is at that time. So it'll move quickly once a lot quicker than we think, because we also have to meet certain timelines, right? We usually have a fall town, we have a spring town meeting, so that's May or so. So that means we'd have to have all kinds of pricing and everything else estimates done by, well, the fall of this year for 26 to build by the following, by July 1st of 26. Modulars go up much quicker. They just go up much quicker than anything else. Once there's no foundation in a temporary situation, so it's literally they roll them in, and once the area is clean, the sewer connections are made and all that stuff, it goes quickly, a few months, not the typical 16 to 18 to 24 months to build a building. It's months, but it's all timely because our way our government works, and getting the money and getting things done and bid and all that, and then getting it done, built. So you got your bid, you got your design, you got your bid, you got your built, just like you would do if it was a new school. And so there's time frames between those. They just go quicker. And I can get you some charts of some timelines that some other districts have already done.
Just a quick question for clarity. Say, for instance, the April 1st vote doesn't go through. Is there any way that they could shut down like the modular too, or is that like they don't need to vote on that?
No, they don't even vote on that because the town meeting, neither the school committee has recommended nor it gone to FinCom nor the town meeting on the idea of modules. I will tell you, I was at a meeting last night. I will tell you that there's still this belief that modulars is just a ploy, and that it won't happen, and it's frustrating, very frustrating. It's not a ploy. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't. If I had money tomorrow morning to add 5 classrooms needed, I don't have 5 spaces in any of my elementary schools except for close your library. You're already closed. You're already closed. Close your library. So we just picked up 2 spots, and so it's. We just don't have the physical space. So, one of the other things that we could have a discussion, not here, but at the school committee, just because it would be very temporary, is very temporary modulars just to get by this enrollment situation that we're having. So we're in a perfect storm of enrollment, and to be quite honest, I think one of Stoughton's things that it needs to celebrate, unfortunately it's taken some hits from certain folks, is we strive every day to keep our students in Stoughton, regardless of their disability. That's our number one vision in Stoughton, is how do we create better programs for our kids. There are always kids through the IEP process that need to go out of district, or parents really fight for that, and the district degrees and all that stuff. But we're starting another TLC program this year, and it's going to the Wilkins. Because of the number of students coming out of the Jones School. Numbers that we just aren't used to seeing. But these are our children. And so we're going to do everything we can to create an awesome program so that they are part of the Stoughton culture and way that we do things. Again, within the means that we have. But if the following year I need another specialized classroom, FY27, I don't know where we're putting it. I honest to goodness don't know. I don't know where we're putting it. His library is in the hallway. Hanson's library is in the back of the cafeteria and hallway. Don't tell that to the fire department. I think we're violating every fire code you can think of. But So perfect storm. That's the phrase I've been using. Yes.
I know when I was reading, Andover said that 80 to 85% students in a building was like ideal. Are we all like maxed out? Is every elementary school above that in town?
Yeah, we're above 85 capacity, and when people look at the square footage of the building and what it was built for, the number we could quote have more students in there if we want to increase class sizes into these 20s and everything else. Some of our rooms aren't made for that, but it's the more important part. We don't have a single elementary school built post IDEA, the federal law on special education, which requires that you have internal programming. So we've had to take classrooms like this and create them into specialized classrooms. So therefore, you can't just put 24 kids in here, or even 20 or 18. And our numbers of students in need of support is growing to a significant number, where we're trying to think about it. You have certain areas where you have multiple grades in one classroom, 3 grades in one classroom. That's a difficult plan of attack. So yes, you can all look at a map of the school and say, oh, it's X square feet, and it's, it allows for 400 kids. Oh, look at the Hanson School, 400 kids. But when you break up all those rooms and specialized classrooms and all of that stuff, 300 over there, they're at 285 right now, another 15 kids. I have no idea where we're going to put them. So.
Back to temporary modulars for a second. I'm not jinxing us, but God forbid while we sleep tonight, something goes down at the South. And you may not have time to answer this question, but it would be pulling in or even a year from now, and we're still in the midst of all this process and stuff like that. How does?
Yeah. So 2 things, right? So the first thing is we never want an emergency to happen in our buildings with any of our kids and staff in it. But those of us, and there are others probably in the room that have had to deal with situations in the school, what you have to do is get a lot of people in the room and figure out how education is going to continue. Right now, the awful situation in California where school buildings have actually been burnt down, those people are all coming together right now and figuring out how are we going to educate kids as soon as possible, right? How are we going to feed kids, families, and all that stuff? So you go into that scenario. I can't say that COVID is the same thing, but we all had to abandon buildings and go home and all of that. So if something were to happen in a building, we would go into that crisis situation and literally we'd still have to go through the Inspector General's perspective of bidding stuff and all that, but it can go a little quicker. Or you go to things like you split a school and you have AM schooling and PM schooling. So an example, the Gibbons goes to school as a normal school in the morning, it closes down, and the South kids all go to the Gibbons for the afternoon. So as long as you get at least a little over a half a day every day, that's considered a day. Is it educationally sound? Every day at half a day, I'm not sure is going to get us there, but, or you come up with something, 5 hours for one group, 5 hours for another group, and blah, blah, blah. But you can imagine the nightmare that is with families, right? And teachers who have their own families, or paraprofessionals, or whoever. You just go into that mode. The reason why we would be looking to close the school if the project doesn't go through is because it's time. And the decisions were made decades ago that we weren't going to be spending money. People don't understand that the moment you spend X number of dollars in that building, all ADA compliance regulations and all of that has to come into play. That is millions upon millions of dollars. Just look at the South School, look at that nice ramp, the ramp that was probably built for a TV with a video recorder on it, not for a wheelchair. Right, the 2 ramps. You'd have to come up with all kinds of, it's a nightmare. But again, if we had to do it, then we would go into that situation and do it as a temporary fix until we could get a final fix.
Any other thoughts for other matters? Yes, Amy.
Just for a point of clarity, for the numbers for special ed, just it might help you guys get a better understanding. So across the 5 elementary schools, I think we're at about 440 or 45, and at secondary we're about 440. So there's over 800 students now in IEPs. We currently at the elementary preschool level have 14 specialized classrooms, and we have about 13 or 14 at the secondary level. And just for a point of reference, when I started 15 years ago as a TLC teacher, there were 2. And we're now at 6 specialized classrooms for TLC, 2 specialized classrooms for LC, and then another 2 specialized classrooms called RISE for higher functioning ASD kiddos. So it's just in the 15 years, the growth and the explosion of our autism population has really, really increased. And it does really have an impact on all the school communities and the different level of support that's required. Even our ALC population has gone from 1 class to 3, which is for our social emotional population. So it is just at the elementary level increasing yearly. Like there's no other way to say that. It is just growing and growing in the level of need.
Thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, thank you. All right, our next meeting is scheduled for February 13th.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good day.
Yeah.
Day before Valentine's
That's
Day.
it.
Which is a fantastic day. I'll be 56.
Oh.
Yeah. Who's bringing the cake?
We'll have to sing happy birthday. So we'll send out an agenda, and we'll probably make it hybrid again at that time, unless there's some specialized item. And so we'll be in touch. So at this time, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved by Ms. Feeney, seconded by Mr. Dorr. All those in favor? All right. Everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for your time.